Lieutenant James Dixon's world shatters as his 8-year-old daughter Sarah falls lifeless before him, her small body crumpling amidst the rubble of their once peaceful home on New Terra. The Vorta, a technologically advanced reptilian species, launch their unprovoked assault on the human colony with devastating precision. Chaos erupts in the streets as Dixon, a seasoned human soldier, fights his way through the burning settlement, desperation fueling every step. Smoke chokes the air, and the screams of panicked colonists mix with the harsh whine of Vorta energy weapons. Dixon's military training kicks in as he dodges enemy fire, his heart pounding with the singular goal of reaching his family. But he arrives too late. The sight of Sarah's broken form ignites a rage within him, a fury that burns hotter than the fires consuming New Terra. As human defenders scramble to regroup in the aftermath of the attack, Dixon's mind races. His fingers trace the outline of an old family heirloom, an ancient sword passed down through generations. Hidden away in the colony's central archive, the weapon holds secrets that may turn the tide against the Vorta's superior technology. Dixon moves with purpose, navigating the chaos to reach the archive. Inside a hidden vault, he retrieves the sword. As he unsheathes it, the blade comes to life, emitting a faint blue glow that seems to respond to his touch. The metal, forged from an unknown alien alloy, hums with potential. Meanwhile, the Vorta occupation of New Terra begins in earnest. Nova, a cunning Vorta commander, renowned for his ruthlessness in conquering human worlds, establishes a fortified command center in the colony's former government building. His reptilian features twist into a satisfied smirk as he surveys the destruction, confident in the superiority of Vorta weaponry and defenses. Unbeknownst to Nova, Dixon embarks on a one-man guerrilla campaign against the Vorta forces. The ancient sword proves to be more than a mere family heirloom. Its blade cuts through Vorta energy shields like paper, and a single touch disables their advanced weaponry. Dixon becomes a ghost, striking from the shadows and vanishing before the Vorta can retaliate. As Dixon's attacks escalate, causing significant damage to Vorta operations, Nova's frustration grows. The commander orders a planet-wide hunt for the elusive human soldier, unaware that his prey now wields a weapon capable of leveling the playing field. Word of Dixon's exploits spreads like wildfire among the human survivors. The mysterious sword becomes a symbol of hope, inspiring others to join the resistance against the Vorta occupation. Even the alien invaders whisper fearfully about the human soldier who can neutralize their technological advantage. The conflict intensifies with each passing day. Dixon's grief for Sarah fuels his relentless assault on Vorta positions, while Nova's reputation as a conqueror of human worlds hangs in the balance. As both sides prepare for a climactic confrontation, the fate of New Terra teeters on the edge of a blade, an ancient sword wielded by a father seeking vengeance for his murdered daughter. Dixon's relentless campaign against the Vorta continued, each strike leaving the alien invaders reeling. His ancient sword cut through their defenses with ease, its otherworldly power a constant source of amazement. As he moved through the ruins of New Terra, a shadow among shadows, Dixon's thoughts never strayed far from Sarah. Her memory fueled his every action, driving him to push beyond his limits. During one of his raids on a Vorta outpost, Dixon encountered a familiar face. Captain Marcus Chen, a former comrade from the Colonial Defense Force, emerged from the chaos with a small group of survivors. Chen's eyes widened as he recognized Dixon, his gaze drawn to the glowing sword. "Dixon? Is that really you?" Chen asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and hope. Dixon nodded, his grip tightening on the sword's hilt. "Chen, good to see you're still fighting." The two men quickly exchanged information, Chen marveling at the effectiveness of Dixon's weapon against Vorta technology. As they talked, the seeds of an alliance began to form. "We need to coordinate our efforts," Chen said, his tactical mind already formulating plans. "Your combat skills combined with my strategic experience could turn the tide of this invasion." Before Dixon could respond, the harsh whine of Vorta energy weapons filled the air. Nova, the Vorta commander, had intensified his efforts to crush the human resistance. Dixon and Chen led their group to safety, dodging enemy fire as they retreated into the colony's labyrinthine streets. As they caught their breath in a bombed-out building, Chen shared grim news. Novas started rounding up civilians. They're building internment camps, separating families. It's getting ugly out there. Dixon's eyes hardened, memories of Sarah's lifeless body flashing through his mind. Then we hit them harder, he growled. Over the next few days, Dixon and Chen worked to establish a hidden base in the colony's underground tunnel system. The vast network of emergency shelters provided the perfect cover for their growing resistance movement. As word spread of Dixon's exploits and his mysterious sword, more survivors flocked to join their cause. In the dim light of their makeshift command center, Dixon and Chen pored over maps of Vorta-controlled territory. Chen's strategic insight complemented Dixon's first-hand knowledge of Vorta weaknesses, allowing them to plan increasingly bold strikes against the alien occupiers. During one such planning session, a young resistance fighter burst into the room, breathless with excitement. "Lieutenant Dixon, Captain Chen, we've intercepted Vorta communications. They're planning a major supply run to their main depot tomorrow night." Dixon and Chen exchanged looks. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. "We hit them hard," Dixon said, his voice filled with quiet dedication. "Disrupt their supply lines, weaken their hold on the colony." Chen nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need a small team, fast, quiet, and deadly." As they prepared for the raid, Dixon found himself drawn to the ancient sword. Its faint blue glow seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, as if sensing the impending battle. He ran a finger along its edge, marveling at how it had become a symbol of hope for the oppressed humans of New Terra. The night of the raid arrived, shrouding Dixon and his team in darkness as they approached the Vorta supply depot. Silently, they moved through the shadows, avoiding the harsh beams of alien searchlights. Dixon's sword hummed softly, ready to neutralize any Vorta technology they encountered. As they breached the depot's outer defenses, chaos erupted. Dixon's blades sliced through energy shields and disabled weapons with each swing. The rest of the team followed in his wake, securing supplies and planting explosives with practiced efficiency. In the midst of the fighting, Dixon found himself face to face with a young Vorta. But instead of attacking, the alien raised her hands in surrender. "Wait, I can help you," she cried out, her reptilian features contorted with fear and something else. Desperation? Hope? Dixon hesitated, his sword poised to strike. The Vorta spoke quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. "My name is Zira. I'm a scientist. I don't agree with what my people are doing here. Please, I have information that could help your resistance." Time seemed to freeze as Dixon weighed his options. The sounds of battle faded into the background as he stared into Zira's alien eyes, searching for any sign of deception. In that moment, he made a decision that would alter the course of the conflict on New Terra. "Come with us," Dixon said, lowering his sword. "But if this is a trick—" Zira nodded vigorously. "It's not, I swear it." As they escaped the depot, explosions rocking the night behind them, Dixon couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The resistance had struck a significant blow against the Vorta, but the addition of Zira to their ranks promised even greater possibilities and greater risks. Back at the resistance base, tension filled the air as Dixon introduced Zira to the others. Chen's face darkened with suspicion, and murmurs of distrust rippled through the gathered fighters. But as Zira began to share her knowledge of Vorta weaknesses and technology, even the most skeptical members of the resistance couldn't deny the value of her information. "There's a central power core," Zira explained, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of so many hostile stares. "It controls our energy shields and weapon systems. If you could disable it—" "We'd leave the Vorta vulnerable," Chen finished, his tactical mind already racing with possibilities. As the resistance began to formulate a plan to strike at the heart of Vorta control, Nova's rage at the supply depot attack reached a boiling point. He deployed elite hunting squads equipped with advanced tracking technology, forcing Dixon and his allies to constantly relocate their base of operations. The human colonists faced increasing hardship as food and medical supplies dwindled under the Vorta blockade. Dixon watched as the faces of those he'd sworn to protect grew gaunt with hunger and lined with worry. The pressure to act, to strike a decisive blow against the Vorta, mounted with each passing day. In the depths of their latest hidden base, Dixon stood before a gathered group of resistance fighters. The ancient sword glowed at his side, a beacon of hope in the dim underground chamber. As he prepared to unveil their most audacious plan yet, Dixon felt the weight of every life on New Terra resting upon his shoulders. The time had come to risk everything in a bid for freedom. Dixon's eyes swept over the gathered resistance fighters, their faces a mixture of hope and trepidation. The ancient sword at his side pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its blue glow casting eerie shadows in the underground chamber. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "This is it," Dixon said, his voice low but steady. "We have a chance to strike at the heart of the Vorta occupation. Thanks to Zira's intelligence, we know the location of their command center and its vulnerabilities." Chen stepped forward, unrolling a crude map on a makeshift table. "The plan is simple but dangerous. We infiltrate through this hidden entrance." He pointed to a spot near the colony's outskirts, "and make our way to the central power core." As Chen outlined the details, Dixon felt a knot form in his stomach. The entrance was perilously close to where Sarah had fallen. He pushed the thought aside, channeling his grief into razor-sharp focus. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Dixon led his small team through the ruins of New Terra. The once bustling streets were now a ghostly labyrinth of debris and shadows. As they approached the hidden entrance, Dixon's breath caught in his throat. Just meters away lay the crumbled remains of his home. For a moment he was frozen in place, the weight of memory threatening to crush him. Chen's hand on his shoulder snapped him back to reality. "James," Chen whispered, using Dixon's first name, "we need to move." Dixon nodded, forcing himself to turn away from the painful reminder of his loss. With Zira's information guiding them, the team slipped into the Vorta Command Center through a service tunnel, bypassing the main security checkpoints. The alien architecture was a stark contrast to the human colony above. Smooth, angular surfaces pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, casting everything in an unsettling green glow. Dixon's sword hummed softly, as if responding to the Vorta technology surrounding them. As they crept through the lesser-known corridors, the team's confidence grew. Zira's intel was proving accurate, allowing them to avoid Vorta patrols with ease. But as they rounded a corner near the central power core, their luck ran out. A squad of elite Vorta guards, their scales gleaming under the harsh lighting, stood between them and their objective. For a heartbeat, both sides froze in surprise. Then chaos erupted. Energy weapons flared to life, filling the corridor with a deadly light show. Dixon's ancient sword sprang into action, its blade effortlessly deflecting the Vorta blasts. He moved with fluid grace, years of military training combining with the sword's otherworldly power. "Push forward!" Dixon shouted, creating an opening for his team. But the Vorta were no easy prey. Their advanced weaponry kept the humans pinned down, and in the confined space, Dixon couldn't neutralize them all. A stray blast caught Chen in the side, sending him crumpling to the ground with a pained cry. Dixon's mind raced. They were so close to their goal, but Chen's wound was severe. Time seemed to slow as he weighed his options. "Reyes, Martinez," he barked, gesturing to two of his team members. "Get Chen out of here. The rest of us push on." As Reyes and Martinez dragged the wounded Chen to safety, Dixon and his remaining fighter, a tough-as-nails woman named Kira, pressed their advantage. With the ancient sword clearing a path, they fought their way closer to the central power core. Deep in the heart of the command center, Nova paced restlessly. Reports of intruders had reached him, along with whispers of impossible technology neutralizing Vorta defenses. His reptilian features contorted with rage as he barked orders into a communication device. "Lock down the entire facility. I want every sector swept. Find these humans and crush them." As alarms blared throughout the complex, Zira worked frantically at a terminal in a secluded corner. Her fingers flew over the alien controls, desperately trying to sabotage the Vorta's internal communications. She knew her betrayal would soon be discovered. But if she could buy Dixon just a little more time... Dixon and Kira burst into the central power core chamber, their clothes singed and faces streaked with sweat and grime. But their moment of triumph quickly turned to dismay. The core was protected by a dizzying array of energy fields and security measures. far beyond what Zira had described. "This isn't right," Kira muttered, her eyes darting between the core and the entrance. "It's like they were expecting us." Dixon's grip tightened on his sword. "We've come too far to turn back now. Start working on those defenses. I'll watch the door." As Kira set to work, her technical skills put to the ultimate test, Dixon stood guard. The sword hummed with an intensity he'd never felt before, as if it sensed the proximity of so much Vorta technology. Suddenly, the door slid open. Nova strode in, flanked by a contingent of guards, their weapons trained on Dixon and Kira. The Vorta commander's eyes widened as they fell on the glowing sword. "So," Nova hissed, his voice a mixture of anger and fascination. "The rumors are true. A human wielding one of our own ancient weapons against us. How delightfully ironic." Dixon's mind reeled. The sword was Vorta technology? Before he could process this revelation, Nova continued. "That blade is a relic of a time long past, human. A remnant of a civil war that nearly destroyed our species. And now you use it against us." Nova's lips curled into a cold smile. "I propose a trade. Surrender the sword, and I will guarantee the safety of your remaining colonists." Dixon's thoughts raced. Could he trust Nova's word? And even if he could, would giving up their most effective weapon doom the resistance in the long run? Before he could respond, the lights in the chamber flickered. Alarms blared with renewed intensity, and Nova's communication device erupted with panicked chatter. Zira's sabotage was taking effect, throwing the entire command center into chaos. Dixon saw his chance. In one fluid motion, he lunged forward, the ancient sword arcing through the air. It sliced through the nearest energy field, protecting the core, causing a cascade of sparks and failing systems. "Kira, now!" Dixon shouted. As Kira jammed the final sequence into the core's control panel, the entire structure began to shake. Nova's face contorted with fury and disbelief as he realized the extent of the human's victory. "All Vorta forces, emergency evacuation!" Nova bellowed into his communicator. "Abandon the planet immediately!" Dixon and Kira fought their way out of the crumbling command center, the sword clearing a path through the panicked Vorta forces. They emerged into the open air of New Terra just as the massive structure behind them began to collapse. Looking up, they saw the sky filled with Vorta ships, hastily retreating from the planet's atmosphere. All around them, human colonists emerged from hiding, their faces a mixture of disbelief and joy as they watched their oppressors flee. Dixon stood there, the ancient sword still glowing in his hand, as the enormity of their victory began to sink in. But even as hope swelled in his chest, he knew this was just the beginning. New Terra lay in ruins, its people battered but unbroken. And the revelation about the sword's origins opened up a whole new set of questions about humanity's place in the galaxy. As the sounds of celebration began to rise around him, Dixon turned his attention to the immediate needs of his people. Chen needed medical attention, and countless others required help. The Vorta were gone for now, but the real work of rebuilding their shattered world was just beginning. With the sword at his side, a reminder of both their victory and the mysteries yet to be unraveled, Dixon strode forward to face the challenges ahead. The sun rose on a New Terra, forever changed. As the dust settled from the Vorta's hasty retreat, the enormity of the task ahead became clear. Dixon stood atop a hill overlooking the colony, his eyes scanning the devastation. Collapsed buildings, scorched fields, and the haunting silence of a world brought to its knees. He descended into the bustling, makeshift camp that had sprung up overnight. Colonists moved with purpose, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and commitment. Dixon approached Chen, who was coordinating the distribution of medical supplies. "How are we looking?" Dixon asked, his voice low. Chen grimaced. "We're stretched thin. Food's running low, and we've got more injured than we can properly treat." Dixon nodded, his mind already formulating plans. "Gather the team leaders. We need to prioritize." Within hours, work crews were dispatched across the colony. Some focused on salvaging supplies from damaged structures, while others began clearing land for emergency crop planting. Dixon moved between groups, offering encouragement and guidance where needed. As night fell, Dixon retreated to his makeshift quarters, a repurposed storage container on the outskirts of the camp. He unsheathed the ancient sword, its soft blue glow illuminating the cramped space. His fingers traced the intricate patterns on the blade, mind racing with questions about its origins and capabilities. Days turned to weeks, and the colony slowly began to take shape once more. But as the immediate crisis subsided, Dixon found himself increasingly drawn to the mystery of the sword. He spent long hours studying it, testing its limits, trying to coax out its secrets. One evening, as Dixon emerged from his quarters after another long session with the sword, he found Chen waiting for him. "James," Chen said, his tone cautious, "people are talking. They're worried you're becoming distracted." Dixon bristled. "I'm not neglecting my duties." "I know, but—" A shout from the communications tent cut him off. "Dixon, we've got something." They rushed over, finding a young technician hunched over a crackling radio. "It's faint, but I think it's a distress call. Human." Dixon leaned in, listening intently to the garbled message. His heart raced as he made out fragments of a plea for help. "Where's it coming from?" he demanded. The technician consulted a star chart. "Looks like Epsilon Indi. It's not far." Dixon straightened, his mind already formulating a plan. "We need to help them." Chen's face darkened. "James, we can barely take care of ourselves. We don't have the resources for a rescue mission." A heated debate erupted among the colony's leadership. Many sided with Chen, arguing that their focus should remain on rebuilding. But Dixon was adamant. "We can't turn our backs on our own people," he insisted, "and this could be our chance to learn more about the Vorta threat." In the end, Dixon's grit won out. A small team of volunteers was assembled, and preparations began to ready one of the few remaining functional spacecraft. As they neared completion of their preparations, a commotion arose from the colony's edge. Guards dragged in a figure, scales glinting in the sunlight. Dixon's breath caught in his throat as he recognized Zira. The Vorta scientist looked haggard, her eyes darting nervously as she was brought before Dixon. I couldn't leave," she stammered. "My people, they've lost their way. I want to help." A crowd gathered, murmurs of distrust and anger rippling through the colonists. Dixon raised a hand, silencing them. "You're taking a huge risk coming here," he said, studying Zira intently. She nodded. "I know, but I believe in what you're fighting for." Dixon made a decision that would change the course of their mission. "You're coming with us." The announcement sent shockwaves through the colony. Many protested vehemently, but Dixon stood firm. Zira's knowledge could prove invaluable. As the rescue team made final preparations, Dixon stood before the assembled colonists. He assured them of their swift return and appointed Chen as interim leader. With a final nod to his second-in-command, Dixon boarded the ship. The small craft lifted off, carrying Dixon, Zira, and a handful of volunteers into the unknown. As they climbed through the atmosphere, alarms suddenly blared throughout the cockpit. "Multiple contacts," the pilot shouted. "Some kind of automated defense network." Dixon leaned forward, watching as a field of sleek, deadly satellites came into view. Zira rushed to a console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Vorta technology," she explained hurriedly. "Left behind to deter your space travel. I can try to disable them, but it will take time." Dixon gripped the back of the pilot's chair. "Do what you can. We'll have to thread the needle." What followed was a harrowing dance through a maze of death. The pilot's skill, combined with Zira's guidance, allowed them to weave between bursts of energy weapons and clouds of metallic projectiles. Dixon's knuckles turned white as he watched a particularly close call sear the ship's hull. Finally, they broke free of the planet's orbit. The tension in the cockpit eased slightly, but Dixon knew their trials were not nearly finished. As they set course for Epsilon Indi, he retreated to a quiet corner of the ship with Zira. Together they pored over the ancient sword. Zira's expertise in Vorta technology proved invaluable as they began to unravel its mysteries. Their breakthrough came as Zira identified a series of nearly microscopic neural interfaces along the hilt. "It's designed to bond with its wielder," she explained, her eyes wide with excitement, "to enhance their natural abilities." Dixon's mind raced with the implications. It explained his uncanny prowess in combat, the feeling of connection he'd experienced with the weapon. But before he could fully process this revelation, a shout came from the cockpit. "We're approaching Epsilon Indy." As they neared the coordinates of the distress signal, the ship's sensors picked up a massive energy signature. On the monitor, a colossal Vorta warship shimmered into view, dwarfing their tiny craft. Dixon's heart sank as he realized the full scope of the challenge before them. A direct assault would be suicide. He turned to his team, their faces a mixture of fear and tenacity. "We need a new plan," he said, his mind already formulating a daring strategy. "We're going to infiltrate that ship." "Warship." Dixon's eyes gleamed with commitment as he outlined his daring plan to the team. Using their magnetic boots, Dixon and his small infiltration team silently approached the hulking Vorta vessel. The contrast between their tiny craft and the massive warship looming before them was stark, but Dixon pushed aside any doubts. They had come too far to turn back now. As they attached themselves to the hull, the team moved with practiced efficiency. Zira's knowledge proved invaluable as she guided them to a maintenance hatch near the aft section. Dixon unsheathed the ancient sword, its familiar weight comforting in his hand. With a swift, precise movement, he sliced through the hatch's locking mechanism. The blade hummed with energy, easily overcoming the Vorta security measures. The team slipped inside, finding themselves in a dimly lit maintenance corridor. The air was thick with the scent of machinery and unfamiliar Vorta technology. Dixon signaled for silence as they began to navigate the labyrinthine passages, relying on Zira's whispered directions to guide them towards the ship's central control room. As they rounded a corner, Dixon's enhanced senses picked up a faint whirring sound. He raised a hand, halting the team. Moments later, a Vorta maintenance drone glided into view. Without hesitation, Dixon sprang into action. His movements were fluid and precise, amplified by his neural connection to the sword. In a blur of motion, he disabled the drone before it could alert the ship's crew. The team pressed on, encountering and silently neutralizing several more drones along the way. Each encounter left Dixon marveling at his own abilities, the sword seeming to anticipate his every move. As they neared the control room, voices drifted from around a corner. Dixon motioned for the team to halt, straining to listen. "Admiral Vex expects the operation to be completed within the hour," a crisp Vorta voice announced. "The human resistance on the planet below will be crushed, and we can finally move forward with our expansion plans." Dixon's mind raced as he processed this new information. They had stumbled upon something far bigger than they had anticipated. He turned to his team, eyes blazing with intensity. "Change of plans," he whispered. "We're going to capture Admiral Vex. With him as a hostage, we can negotiate the withdrawal of Vorta forces from all human territories." The team exchanged glances, the weight of this bold strategy settling over them. Dixon quickly outlined their new approach. Zira and one of Dixon's companions would head to the engine room to create a diversion, while Dixon and the remaining team member would make their way to the bridge. As they split up, Dixon felt a surge of anticipation. The sword thrummed at his side, its energy seeming to pulse in sync with his quickening heartbeat. They moved swiftly through the ship, the sword effortlessly cutting through security checkpoints and force fields. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie red glow. Zira's diversion had begun. Taking advantage of the chaos, Dixon and his companion burst onto the bridge. The scene before them was one of confusion and panic. Vorta officers scrambled to respond to the multiple system failures Zira had triggered. In the center of it all stood Admiral Vex, his commanding presence unmistakable even in the midst of the chaos. Dixon locked eyes with the Vorta leader, a moment of recognition passing between them. Then Dixon was in motion. The sword sang in his hands as he engaged the Vorta crew. His movements were a blur, enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge energy blasts and incapacitate opponents with inhuman speed. Within moments, the bridge crew lay unconscious or disarmed. Admiral Vex, caught off guard by the sudden assault, found himself cornered. His eyes widened as he took in Dixon's glowing sword and the fallen forms of his crew. "Impossible!" Vex hissed, his composure cracking. Before Dixon could respond, his communicator crackled to life. Zira's voice came through, urgent and filled with dread. "Dixon, we have a problem. The ship is carrying a superweapon capable of destroying entire planets. It's primed and targeted at the human world below. If the ship detects a loss of Vorta control, it will fire automatically. The gravity of the situation hit Dixon like a physical blow. He looked from the captured admiral to the ship's control panels, mind racing to formulate a plan. The fate of countless lives now rested in his hands. As Dixon grappled with the complexity of the situation, he noticed the sword at his side pulsing with an intense blue light, stronger than he had ever seen before. The weapon seemed to be reacting to the advanced Vorta technology surrounding them, its power growing in response. With time running out and the superweapon's countdown ticking away, Dixon made a split-second decision. He ordered his team to begin evacuating the human colonists from the planet's surface using the Vorta ship's teleportation technology. It was a risky move that could alert other Vorta forces in the sector, but it was the only way to ensure the colonists' safety if they couldn't disarm the superweapon in time. As the evacuation began, Dixon turned his attention to Admiral Vex. The Vorta leader stood defiant, a sneer on his face despite his precarious position. "Tell me how to disarm the superweapon," Dixon demanded, bringing the glowing sword to bear. Vex's eyes flicked to the pulsing blade, a flicker of unease crossing his features. "You're too late, human. Even if you could understand our technology, which you can't, Vorta reinforcements will be here long before you can hope to succeed." Dixon's grip tightened on the sword's hilt. As he did so, he felt a surge of energy course through him. The weapon's glow intensified, and in that moment, Dixon realized that unlocking the full potential of this ancient artifact might be their only hope of overcoming the seemingly impossible odds they faced. With the clock ticking down and the lives of countless humans hanging in the balance, Dixon steeled himself for what lay ahead. He knew that the challenges to come would test not only his combat skills, but also his leadership and decision-making abilities. As he prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries of the sword and confront the technological terrors of the Vorta warship, Dixon couldn't shake the feeling that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of this mission, but potentially the entire course of the human-Vorta war. Conflict. The sword at Dixon's side pulsed with an even more intense blue light, drawing his attention away from Admiral Vex's sneering face. Suddenly, the weapon's neural interface activated, flooding Dixon's mind with a torrent of information. Images and knowledge cascaded through his consciousness, revealing the sword's true nature. It was created by an ancient Vorta civilization, one that valued peace and cooperation, a stark contrast to the current aggressive regime. The sword was designed as a failsafe against tyranny, capable of interfacing with and controlling Vorta technology. Dixon's eyes widened as he processed this revelation. Without hesitation, he turned to the warship's control panels, the sword guiding his movements. His fingers flew across the alien interface, navigating through the ship's systems with uncanny precision. "What are you doing?" Vex demanded, his composure cracking as he watched Dixon operate the Vorta technology with ease. Dixon didn't respond, his focus entirely on the task at hand. Within moments, he located the superweapon's control protocols. The sword's energy surged through him, and with a few swift commands, he deactivated the planet-destroying weapon. A wave of relief washed over him, as the immediate threat to the human colony below was averted. However, his victory was short-lived. The deactivation triggered a ship-wide alert, klaxons blaring throughout the bridge. In the chaos that followed, Admiral Vex seized his opportunity. With a snarl, he broke free from his restraints and lunged at Dixon. The two men collided, Vex's momentum carrying them both to the floor. A fierce, hand-to-hand combat ensued on the bridge. Vex proved to be a formidable opponent, his movements honed by years of military training. Despite Dixon's enhanced abilities, he found himself hard-pressed to gain the upper hand. As they grappled, the bridge doors hissed open. Zira and the rest of Dixon's team rushed in, weapons at the ready. Zira's eyes widened as she took in the scene, her gaze locking onto the glowing sword lying just out of Dixon's reach. "Dixon!" she called out, her voice urgent. "The sword! It's more powerful than we realized!" Dixon managed to throw Vex off momentarily, rolling towards the weapon. His hand closed around the hilt just as Vex lunged at him again. Zira's voice cut through the chaos. The sword can broadcast a signal. It'll disable all Vorta weapons and shields in the sector. Energy surged through Dixon as he processed this information. With revitalized commitment, he brought the sword up in a sweeping arc, forcing Vex back. The Admiral stumbled, giving Dixon the opening he needed. In a blur of motion, he closed the distance between them, using the sword's enhanced capabilities to outmaneuver his opponent. With a well-placed strike, he sent Vex crashing to the floor, unconscious. Dixon turned to Zira, breathing heavily. How do we activate the signal? Zira rushed to the ship's communication array, her fingers flying over the controls. Connect the sword here, she instructed, indicating a port on the console. Without hesitation, Dixon plunged the sword into the designated slot. The weapon's glow intensified, spreading through the ship's systems. A low hum filled the air, building to a crescendo. Suddenly, a powerful pulse emanated from the ship, spreading throughout the sector. On the bridge's monitors, they watched as Vorta ships in the vicinity suddenly lost power, their weapons and shields disabled. Dixon quickly established contact with the human resistance on the planet. This is Dixon, he announced. The Vorta defenses are down. Begin your counterattack immediately. As reports of human victories began pouring in, Dixon allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. However, his relief was short-lived. The ship's long-range sensors lit up, showing multiple Vorta reinforcement fleets approaching from different directions. They're out of range of the disabling pulse, Zira observed, her voice tense. Dixon's mind raced as he assessed their options. The asteroid field nearby caught his attention. We need to evacuate the colony, he decided. Use this ship's teleporters and any available spacecraft. We'll regroup in that asteroid field and use it for cover. As his team sprang into action, coordinating the massive evacuation effort, Dixon turned his attention to the unconscious Admiral Vex. The Vorta leader was now their prisoner, and potentially a valuable source of information. When Vex regained consciousness, Dixon began questioning him about Vorta command structures and war strategies. The Admiral's responses were guarded, but revealing. However, Dixon couldn't shake the feeling that Vex might be intentionally misleading them. As the evacuation proceeded and the Vorta reinforcements drew nearer, Dixon found himself facing a crucial decision. The captured warship represented a powerful asset, but using it to confront the incoming fleets head-on would be incredibly risky. Dixon stood on the bridge, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The sword pulsed at his side, its energy seeming to urge him towards action. As he contemplated their next move, he knew that his decision would shape the course of the conflict to come. The asteroid field loomed before them, offering temporary sanctuary. Behind them, the last of the evacuation ships streamed away from the planet's surface, and beyond, the approaching Vorta fleets edged ever closer. Dixon took a deep breath, his decision crystallizing. He turned to his team, ready to issue the order that would determine their fate and the future of human resistance. Resistance's survival. The approaching Vorta fleets left no room for hesitation. With a deep breath, he made his decision. We're going to confront those fleets head-on, Dixon announced, his voice firm and resolute. We need to buy time for the evacuation and preserve this warship. It's too valuable an asset to lose. Zira's eyes widened. That's incredibly risky, Dixon. We're outnumbered and... I know, Dixon cut her off, his hand resting on the pulsing sword at his side. But this weapon has shown us it's more than just a blade. It's the key to unlocking this ship's full potential. Without further debate, Dixon strode to the warship's control console. He plunged the sword into an interface port, feeling a surge of energy course through him as the ancient weapon connected with the Vorta systems. Information flooded his mind, schematics and tactical data unfolding before his eyes. Zira, coordinate with the resistance on the planet, maximize our teleportation efforts, and use every available spacecraft. We need that evacuation moving at full speed, Dixon ordered as his fingers flew across the alien controls, the sword guiding his movements. As Zira set to work, Dixon turned his attention to the approaching Vorta fleets. The warship's advanced sensor array painted a dire picture, dozens of enemy vessels bearing down on their position. But Dixon's newfound connection to the ship revealed possibilities he hadn't imagined. Charging main cannon, Dixon announced, his voice tight with concentration. The ship hummed with power, the sword's energy amplifying its systems beyond their original specifications. The lead ships of the Vorta fleets entered weapons range. Dixon didn't hesitate. He fired. A lance of blindingly bright energy erupted from the warship, slicing through space. It struck the lead vessel of the nearest fleet, overwhelming its shields in an instant. The Vorta ship exploded in a spectacular ball of fire. Dixon didn't pause to celebrate. He fired again and again, each shot guided by the sword's interface. Vorta ships fell in rapid succession, their formations scattering in confusion. On the bridge, Admiral Vex watched the battle unfold, with a mixture of shock and grudging admiration. "Impossible," he muttered. "This ship was an experimental prototype. Even I didn't know its full capabilities." Dixon's eyes never left the tactical display. "Care to share any other details about this vessel, Admiral? It might just save your life." Vex hesitated, clearly conflicted. Finally, he spoke. "There's a secondary weapons array, designed for mass disabling of enemy fleets, but it was unstable in testing. Using it could tear the ship apart." Dixon weighed the information, his mind racing. Before he could respond, Zira's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. "Dixon, we've got a situation at the asteroid base," she reported urgently. "The Resistance just found some kind of ancient Vorta facility hidden in one of the larger asteroids. Initial scans show technology similar to your sword." The implications hit Dixon like a physical blow. More weapons like his could turn the tide of the entire war. But abandoning the battle now would leave the evacuation exposed. As Dixon grappled with this new development, the tactical display lit up with an unexpected signal. A small group of Vorta ships had broken away from the main fleet, approaching under a flag of parley. "This is Captain Zorn of the Vorta Reformation Movement," a gravelly voice announced over the comm channel. "We seek an alliance against the current regime. There are many among our people who wish to return to the peaceful ways of our ancestors." Dixon exchanged a wary glance with Zira. This could be a trap, but if genuine, it could change everything. The sword pulsed at his side, as if urging him to seize this opportunity. "Zira, take a team to that facility in the asteroid," Dixon decided. "I'll hold the line here and see what this Captain Zorn has to say." As Zira departed, Dixon turned his attention back to the battle. The main Vorta fleet was regrouping, preparing for another assault. Time was running out. "Captain Zorn?" Dixon addressed the Vorta separatist. "I'm willing to discuss terms, but I need assurances. Help us repel this attack, and we'll talk." There was a moment of tense silence before Zorn replied. "Agreed. Transmitting tactical data now." Dixon integrated Zorn's ships into his battle plan, all while keeping a wary eye on their movements. The sword's energy continued to flow through the warship's systems, pushing its capabilities to the limit. As the combined forces prepared to face the renewed Vorta assault, Dixon couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of a major turning point. The ancient facility in the asteroid, this potential Vorta alliance, and the incredible power of the sword, any one of these factors could reshape the entire conflict. But first, they had to survive the coming storm. Dixon gripped the warship's controls, the sword's energy humming through his body. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it head-on. As Dixon prepared to engage the Vorta fleet, a priority transmission from Zira cut through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. "Dixon, you need to hear this." Zira's voice crackled over the comm, excitement evident in her tone. "We've accessed the facility. It's incredible." Dixon's fingers paused over the controls. "Go on." "It's an archive, Dixon. Ancient Vorta history, advanced technology beyond anything we've seen. But that's not all." Zira paused, her next words carrying the weight of their potential. "We've found schematics for mass-producing weapons like your sword and instructions for a large-scale energy disruption device. It could neutralize Vorta tech across entire star systems." The implications hit Dixon like a physical blow. This discovery could change everything, potentially ending the war in one decisive stroke. His mind raced, considering the possibilities and risks. As if sensing his thoughts, Captain Zorn's voice cut in. "Commander Dixon, the main Vorta fleet is beginning their approach. We need to make a decision now." Dixon's gaze flickered to Admiral Vex, who stood silently observing, then back to the tactical display showing Zorn's ships alongside his own. In that moment, he made a choice that would alter the course of the conflict. "Captain Zorn, I'm about to share some information with you," Dixon said, his voice steady. "What you do with it will determine the future of both our peoples." Without further preamble, Dixon relayed Zira's findings. As he spoke, he watched Zorn's holographic image carefully, searching for any sign of betrayal or aggression. Instead, he saw something unexpected: hope. This changes everything," Zorn said, his voice filled with awe. "Commander Dixon, you're trusting me with information that could destroy my people. Why?" "Because I believe there's a chance for peace," Dixon replied, "and I'm hoping you see it too." Zorn was silent for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "My forces are yours, Commander. Let's end this war." With Zorn's commitment secured, Dixon sprang into action. "Zira, activate the disruption device. All ships prepare for assault. We hit them the moment that pulse goes out." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as Dixon coordinated the joint human-Vorta attack force. Energy thrummed through the ship, the ancient sword pulsing in time with Dixon's racing heart. Suddenly, a massive wave of energy erupted from the asteroid field, washing over the approaching Vorta fleet. Ship after ship went dark, their weapons and shields failing as the pulse hit. "Now!" Dixon commanded, and their combined fleet surged forward. The battle that followed was unlike anything Dixon had ever experienced. Human and Vorta ships fought side by side, their coordinated assault tearing through the disabled enemy fleet. Dixon's captured warship led the charge, its enhanced weapons cutting swaths through the opposition. As victory seemed within reach, a commotion behind Dixon caught his attention. Admiral Vex, seizing the chaos of battle as an opportunity, had broken free of his restraints. He lunged for the ship's controls, a desperate gleam in his eyes. Dixon reacted instinctively, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. The blade hummed to life, its energy singing through his veins. "It's over, Vex," Dixon said, leveling the sword at the Admiral. "Order your forces to stand down." Vex snarled, his composure finally cracking. "Never! I'll destroy this ship before I let it fall into human hands." The Admiral charged, and Dixon met him head-on. Their battle raged across the bridge, a deadly dance of skill and desperation. Vex fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, but Dixon's enhanced abilities, coupled with the sword's power, gave him the edge. With a final, decisive strike, Dixon disarmed Vex, sending the Admiral crashing to the deck. The sword's tip hovered inches from Vex's throat. "It's finished," Dixon said, his voice firm. "Call off your forces, now!" Defeat etched in every line of his face, Vex nodded. With trembling hands, he activated the fleet-wide comm. "This is Admiral Vex. All Vorta forces, stand down. I repeat, stand down and withdraw from human space immediately." As the Vorta ships began their retreat, a cheer went up across the bridge. Dixon lowered his sword, the full weight of their victory settling over him. In the days that followed, Dixon worked tirelessly alongside Captain Zorn to establish a framework for peace between humans and Vorta. The ancient facility in the asteroid became a symbol of their newfound cooperation, with joint research teams delving into its secrets. As Dixon oversaw the production and distribution of the new energy-disrupting weapons to human colonies, he couldn't help but reflect on the long, arduous journey that had brought him to this point. The war that had claimed his daughter's life was over, but the work of building a lasting peace was just beginning. 1 month after the battle, Dixon stood on the bridge of a sleek exploration vessel, gazing out at the stars. The ship was a joint human-Vorta venture, crewed by members of both species. Their mission, to explore uncharted space, fostering understanding and cooperation along the way. As the ship prepared for its maiden voyage, Dixon's hand brushed against the hilt of his sword, now more a symbol than a weapon. He thought of Sarah, of all those lost in the war, and of the future they had secured. "Commander," a young Vorta officer approached, interrupting his reverie. "We're ready for departure." Dixon nodded, turning his attention to the vast expanse of space before them. "Then let's see what's out there," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Dixon felt a familiar surge of energy, But this time, it wasn't the sword's power flowing through him. It was something else entirely. Hope. The exploration vessel accelerated, streaking away from known space. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Dixon knew they would face them together, humans and Vorta alike. The future, for the first time in years, looked bright.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.